My name is Clementine E Burnley, and when I opened the email about going to Villa Ligura, I actually stood up. I sort of stood up and did this classic double fist punch towards the ceiling. I was absolutely thrilled.
My name is Amanda Vilanova, originally from Puerto Rico. And when I got the email saying that I had been chosen for the retreat in Villa Lugara, I was incredibly happy and excited. I couldn't believe it, to be honest, because I'm not the most experienced writer. So it was a real moment of rising to a challenge, and being told that I do have a potential to write, which is really important to me. So I was incredibly excited, happy, jumped up, told everyone. And then in an hour and a half later was incredibly worried that I had absolutely no skill or enough skill compared to the other writers that were going to be chosen. But it was very, very exciting, very nice to have a challenge to rise to.
So, Amanda, what did you think the retreat was going to be like?
It's interesting. I had no preconception of writers' retreats, apart from thinking that perhaps at least one of the writers would be very intense and need to discuss solely their own work or be isolated up in their room, troubled by the concepts that they were working with. So I was worried that we wouldn't get on, basically. That would be a month where people had egos and stress and competition, I suppose. That was my main worry, that it would end up being a little bit lonely. I think, which to my surprise it wasn't, thankfully. Clementine, what were your notions or ideas of what a writer's retreat would be like?
I didn't have many preconceptions. I had been on one 10-day workshop and we had all gotten along quite well, but I didn't know what a month's retreat would be like. And I did think it might be much more intense than the shorter workshop experiences that I've had. But I was just so pleased to be going to Italy. I think I decided it didn't really matter what the others were like. I was determined to have a good time. Does the sound of the city you live in, Amanda, impact how you write? And if so, what was it like being on a quiet country retreat?
Being in Villa Lugara is probably just the diametrical opposite of living in Southeast London. Or even if I were in Carolina, Puerto Rico, where I'm from, Latinos are incredibly loud and all over the shop. And Southeast London is a place where people party, sell stuff on the street, have loud conversations, which I love. I absolutely love living in Southeast London. But it was incredible to have silence, like a beautiful silence, because it brought a lot of reflection and a lot of creativity, I think, to me in that space. I hadn't had time to just concentrate on my ideas, even in my surroundings, and not have other worries to think about. I think it was a real privilege, to be honest, to be in a space like that. Clementine, how about you?
So I live on a busy street in Edinburgh and I'm not very far away from a police station. And so I'm used to the sound of sirens and the sound of traffic and the sound of people who've been drinking on Friday and Saturday night come howling down the hill. And sometimes it sounds like the ninth circle of hell at 1 in the morning. So being in my cloistered room in Villa Lugara was the diametrical opposite, except that we did have during the day regularly the peacock looking for his or her mate. We never did work out what the no, it had to have been a peacock because the peahens are much quieter. They're like quiet brown birds. And then once in a while in the far distance There would be perhaps a noise of the diggers that were working on the road in the valley. And so actually, it was a place where I could study sound because I could separate the sound out, right? So my ear sort of became trained to listen out.
Being in Villalogara one, I had time to think about my ideas in more than in angles that I necessarily didn't. I think when you're working and trying to balance other things, you're trying to create concrete goals for yourself, and it can become a little bit of a formula. Today I must complete 350 words because if not, I will not have contributed anything to my goal of creating something, which is obviously necessary and completely valuable. But being in Villalugara one gave me space to think about it in different ways and not necessarily have goals like that because I had time. And I had really amazing conversations with people that have already completed work. It was really interesting to speak to Saima, who's written novels before, is on her third of this series, and suddenly going, yes, you just have to keep going with the idea, rethink this, stop, look at it differently. And there'll be some days where you won't do anything, and that doesn't mean that you haven't progressed.
My time in Villa Locora was the first situation I've been in where I had nothing to do but write. And it wasn't like being on holiday. I thought it would feel like being on holiday and I would have to force myself to work if I had that holiday feeling. But actually, I noticed two things. One thing was that I had set myself a deadline, which was the end of the retreat, and I began to count down the days. And so the first thing I wrote on it day zero. And every time I wrote which day it was. The only real fixed part of my writing routine was to write morning pages. So I got up every day and I went usually outside to the loggia or terrazzo, which was that covered room, which was still outside with that beautiful view. And I sat there and I wrote at least one page, which was just a journal. It wasn't anything to do with the memoir that I was trying to finish. It was just writing for my own pleasure. And I really enjoyed that. And that's the thing that I took away with me is just writing for the sake of writing. The other thing was talking to other people who were writing. So writing together without necessarily talking about what I was writing, about just being with people who took writing as a job, right? So I think that was the difference for me. I respected myself and I took myself seriously as a writer, and I took that away with me as well. The balance of sitting at my desk upstairs in my own bedroom with my own windows to look out of while I wrote were pretty evenly balanced with being able to go downstairs, have a bit of cake, talk to other people, get in a car, drive to the river, have a walk. Each activity fed back into creativity. I got so attached to Villa Lugar, I just didn't want to leave it. This is the problem.
I didn't want to leave Villalugara either, to be honest. It was a beautiful place, but apart from that, I met a group of people that I would not have met in any other way. It's a real incredible setting in which all of a sudden you are sharing an experience with people, the set of skills and interest in particular stories that you would not meet otherwise. Because we had all been chosen to be there, it removes certain pressures of impressing one person or the other. It was just about chatting about people's work and their lives and how they work and how this time was impacting them, and you had something to compare it to with your own experience. It really sort of highlighted and connected all of us in a really nice way, I think.
So Villa Lugora has its own character. That's the thing that I would say about it. It's seen decades, it's been through changes. It's part of the neighborhood. And so this sort of exposed brick and these really generous spaces, the feeling of coolness when you're standing inside it, because it's built out of this thick brick. And you can feel the unevenness of the floors, when you're walking on them. Sometimes I'd come in from the pool and I'd go down the corridor, and it's just got so much character, this house. The insulation of the spaces against the heat. For me, it felt comfortable. It just felt like a comfortable, lived in, like somebody's home, but actually quite grand as well. It felt sort of genteel and grand, and not at all like the sort of thing that I would be able to have for a long time in my ordinary life. I thought it was absolutely charming.
I found Villa Lugar a really interesting place. It felt beautiful and large, but also lived in and not incredibly fancy in ways that you would feel I would have felt uncomfortable with. I think it managed to welcome you and not alienate you, which could, if you aren't used to being in a large house with all of these rooms and a pizza oven and a pool and beautiful views, you may feel uncomfortable with it. Managed to kind of hug you, I think, because it felt like people had lived there. I think it's a really inspiring place, actually. Absolutely beautiful food. So with lots of like love and care and equality. And I did loads of setting the table every evening to help our cook Fiona. And it was just developing a relationship with the cooking space and then sitting down and having like amazing conversations over wonderful meals. It did make me think I needed to write and work during the day to deserve that moment of peace and sharing. So I could bring stuff that I'd done during the day for those moments of food and conversation. I think it really enhanced the experience and also made me work for my gorgeous meals.
I've been cooking for a family for more than 20 years. And so the food that we were served at least twice a day, because coming downstairs and having fresh fruit already prepared at breakfast, and also somebody who said hello, in the morning, it was quite magical. Every evening there was a feast. It made me feel, again, taken seriously, right? Because you don't just prepare food like that for just anyone. I was doing important work. Writing is important work, and writers need to eat well. And by golly, we did eat well.
And to the next group of writers who get the privilege to go to Villarugara, I would say seize every moment, but no pressure. Just listen to yourself and your journey and what you need to write each day, and that goals move and shift. So allow the people around you and the scenery to influence what you're trying to do. I think when we're given those opportunities, it is about allowing ourselves to change and our material to change and our work to change. Look out the window a lot. I still try and relive me just looking out the window at the beautiful scenery.
Whatever I say is tinged with absolute envy. So take this, take this with a pinch of salt. But I'd say that enjoy it. That's what I'd say. I'd say really use all of your senses to take in the experience. It's such a special time. Not being there anymore, I still think about it regularly, and I still wonder actually sometimes if it actually happened, it had that much of an effect on me.